The opening of this video begins with a powerful, cinematic portrayal of a seemingly unshakable individual, someone who appears perfectly composed under extreme stress. Imagine a soldier on the front lines, staring into the chaos of war, or a CEO facing a critical decision that could make or break their company. The weight of their responsibility is immense, yet on the outside, they maintain perfect control, their face unreadable, their movements steady. The world sees them as unshakable, emotionless, impenetrable. Yet, inside, their mind races with thoughts of fear, doubt, and exhaustion. They question their own capacity to endure and feel the gnawing sense of vulnerability that they cannot escape. This opening scene sets the tone for a fundamental contrast, the illusion of invulnerability versus the truth of emotional depth. In our modern society, there is a prevailing myth that to be strong, one must not only endure, but do so without visible signs of weakness. We are conditioned to believe that strength is synonymous with emotional stoicism, that to be unshakable means to remain untouched by life's emotional storms. We often place value on a person's ability to suppress their feelings, to appear unmoved by tragedy, and to maintain an air of indifference, thinking this is the mark of a resilient individual. However, as the camera pulls back, the facade begins to crumble. The soldier's heartbeat quickens, the CEO's palms sweat. Beneath the surface, their emotions are swirling: fear, doubt, anxiety. In reality, they are not unshakable because they have somehow mastered their emotions. They are merely ignoring them, pushing them down in an attempt to survive. This is where the tension begins. The tension between what we believe emotional strength to be and the deeper, often uncomfortable truth that true emotional resilience isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about embracing our vulnerability, our fear, and our pain. The core of this video lies in questioning that very belief, the idea that emotional resilience comes from suppressing or avoiding the feelings that make us human. In fact, it is the very act of denying our emotions that creates a more profound sense of fragility, a kind of internal conflict that weakens us over time. When we bury our emotions, they do not disappear. Instead, they manifest in subtle ways: stress, anxiety, burnout, and even physical illness. The more we attempt to remain unaffected, the more we push ourselves toward an emotional collapse. The introduction doesn't just set up this conflict. It invites the viewer to step back and reconsider what they have been taught about emotional strength. The key question that this section poses is, what if the key to being unshakable isn't hiding the tremors inside you, but learning to stand tall despite them? The question isn't about eradicating emotions, but about learning how to manage them without allowing them to control us. This section will leave the viewer with a deep sense of introspection, a feeling that something is off in the conventional understanding of strength. By creating this emotional and philosophical conflict, the video not only draws the viewer in but also challenges the way they've been conditioned to perceive emotional control. From here, the journey will unfold, guiding the viewer into the core of the matter, that the greatest strength lies not in emotional suppression, but in the acceptance and understanding of the full range of human emotions. This section concludes by leading into the next, where we will dive deeper into the philosophical and psychological dimensions of emotional resilience, moving beyond the surface and exploring the deeper layers of human experience. The tension created in the opening scene will give way to a more thoughtful exploration, one that reveals the true nature of emotional unshakability. In this section, we begin our deep dive into the core exploration of emotional resilience, where we move beyond the superficial understanding of strength as the absence of emotion. Instead, we explore the philosophical and psychological truths that reveal emotional unshakability is not about suppressing or numbing emotions, but about embracing the full spectrum of human experience, both light and dark. This is where we confront the heart of the misconception, that to be emotionally resilient, we must appear invulnerable, to stay detached and stoic. We start by examining the work of Nietzsche, whose philosophy on suffering and strength presents an essential foundation. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power suggests that human beings are not simply driven by survival, but by an inner force to overcome, transcend, and create meaning in the face of hardship. This idea runs counter to the modern notion that we must avoid suffering in order to maintain strength. Nietzsche argued that suffering, if embraced and understood, becomes a crucible for transformation. It's not the pain itself that defines us, but how we react to it, how we transcend it. In Nietzsche's view, it is through embracing our suffering, accepting it, and using it as fuel for growth that we achieve true strength. The implication here is profound. Our greatest emotional resilience is forged in the fire of vulnerability, not in its suppression. Similarly, Carl Jung's work on the shadow is a crucial lens through which we can examine the tension between emotional suppression and emotional resilience. Jung's shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we reject or deny, those traits, emotions, and desires that we consider socially unacceptable or weak. These repressed aspects often remain hidden in the unconscious, but they do not disappear. Instead, they influence our behavior in unconscious ways, often manifesting as anxiety, frustration, or even physical illness. Jung argued that emotional health and true strength come not from denying the shadow, but from integrating it into our conscious experience. When we face our fears, our doubts, and our vulnerabilities, rather than suppressing them, we reclaim our power. Emotional resilience, then, is not about eliminating negative emotions, but about acknowledging them, integrating them, and learning to work with them. Jung's theory helps us shift our understanding of emotional strength. It is not about avoiding or conquering our negative emotions, but about making peace with them and using them to fuel personal transformation. This transformation occurs through the process of integration, the reconciliation of our conscious and unconscious selves. When we deny parts of who we are, we give away our power. When we embrace all aspects of our emotional being, we become whole and unshakable in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Moving from the depths of philosophy, we turn to the psychological realities of modern life. Many of us have been conditioned to equate emotional control with strength. In today's fast-paced, high-pressure world, we are taught to suppress our emotions, to keep a poker face in moments of stress, to push through adversity without showing vulnerability. But what happens when we live according to this false understanding of emotional strength? We find ourselves disconnected, burnt out, and overwhelmed. This emotional repression, this constant effort to appear invulnerable, leads to fragmentation within the self. We fragment ourselves into parts that we deem worthy of expression and others that we keep hidden away, only to have them manifest in unhealthy ways. The more we try to control and suppress our emotions, the more they come to control us in unexpected and damaging ways. Psychologically, the toll of emotional suppression is evident in the rise of anxiety, depression, and burnout. When we refuse to acknowledge or express our emotions, we build a wall between ourselves and our true self. We become disconnected from our inner world, and this disconnection erodes our sense of self-worth and peace. True emotional resilience, on the other hand, arises from understanding the role of emotions in our lives. Emotions are not enemies to be vanquished. They are signals, messengers that tell us about our desires, fears, needs, and boundaries. When we begin to listen to them, to honor them, we can make better choices and live more authentically. As we move through this exploration, we return to the idea of external versus internal worlds. In many ways, our external world, the world of appearances, expectations, and social pressures, reinforces the illusion that strength is about appearing unemotional, unaffected by life's challenges. Yet, when we look at the internal world of human experience, we realize that true strength lies in emotional engagement, not detachment. The external world may praise the stoic, the emotionless, the unshakable person, but the internal world, the world of our thoughts, feelings, and experiences, tells a different story. Emotional resilience is not about controlling our emotions, but about acknowledging them, accepting them, and learning from them. To bring this point to life, imagine a person who has spent their entire life avoiding or suppressing their emotions. They may have learned to perform emotionally, at work, in relationships, and in social settings, but beneath the surface, they are disconnected from their true selves. Over time, the strain of this emotional repression takes its toll. They feel burned out, anxious, and increasingly numb. But when they begin to allow themselves to feel deeply, when they stop running from their emotions and begin to understand them, they experience a profound shift. Their emotional life becomes a source of strength rather than weakness. They no longer have to pretend to be unshakable, because they are learning to accept the ebb and flow of life's emotional tides. As this section draws to a close, we can feel the tension resolve into a profound realization. The key to being unshakable is not in becoming emotionless, but in becoming deeply attuned to our emotional lives. In fact, the more we embrace our vulnerability and fears, the more grounded and resilient we become. Emotional resilience, then, is not a process of suppression, but one of integration and acceptance, accepting both the beauty and the pain of being human. With this realization, we transition into the next section, where we explore how this understanding can lead to a profound transformation, one that takes us from emotional fragmentation to emotional wholeness. In this section, we explore the powerful transformation that occurs when we shift from seeing emotions as obstacles to viewing them as sources of strength. The moment of realization is subtle but profound. True emotional resilience does not come from repressing or controlling emotions, but from embracing them fully. This breakthrough is not a loud, dramatic moment, but a quiet, internal shift that radically changes the way we interact with the world and ourselves. We follow the protagonist, a character who has long lived under the illusion of emotional invulnerability, as they begin to experience this transformation firsthand. The protagonist, who has spent much of their life trying to suppress their emotions, encounters a life event that cracks their hardened exterior. This could be a professional setback, a personal loss, or a moment of extreme stress that forces them to confront the reality of their emotional experience. Up until this point, they have viewed emotions as weaknesses to be controlled. They've been taught that emotional outbursts are signs of failure, that showing vulnerability is equivalent to losing control. But as the event unfolds, they find themselves overwhelmed by feelings they can no longer suppress: fear, grief, anger, or doubt. At first, they fight against these emotions, pushing them back, trying to maintain the facade of composure they've worked so hard to build. But the harder they fight, the more the emotions seem to grow, until they reach a breaking point. It is in this moment of vulnerability, this breaking point, that the transformation begins. The protagonist suddenly experiences a quiet realization: the emotions they have been so desperately trying to avoid are not their enemies, but their allies. They begin to understand that emotions are not signs of weakness, but powerful signals that can guide them toward a deeper understanding of themselves. They realize that suppressing these emotions only creates inner conflict, stress, and disconnection. By embracing their vulnerability, they open themselves up to true strength, a strength that comes from the willingness to experience life in its fullest, rawest form. This realization is not immediate or easy. It's a process that unfolds over time, marked by moments of reflection, self-doubt, and fear. But as the protagonist begins to integrate their emotional experiences, they start to see the world through a new lens. They no longer view their emotions as something to control or escape, but as part of their human experience, something to be understood, not feared. The breakthrough moment comes when the protagonist experiences what could be described as an emotional awakening. This might occur during a quiet, solitary moment, perhaps in nature, during meditation, or while reflecting in a peaceful environment. They come to a realization that their emotional life is not separate from their strength, but integral to it. In fact, it is the depth of their emotional experience that gives them the resilience to face the world with authenticity and courage. It is through embracing their emotions, rather than avoiding them, that they unlock their true power. This emotional awakening is cinematic in its flow. The protagonist moves from a state of tension and resistance to a place of acceptance and peace. There's a moment of stillness, a kind of emotional silence, as they let go of their need to control or suppress their feelings. In that silence, they realize that emotional depth does not weaken them. It empowers them. The emotions that once felt like burdens are now understood as tools for growth and self-awareness. They can now navigate their emotional landscape with grace and understanding, knowing that each emotion, whether positive or negative, carries within it a lesson, a path to deeper self-awareness. In this transformation, the protagonist also begins to recognize the difference between emotional strength and emotional numbness. They no longer confuse emotional resilience with emotional detachment. Instead, they understand that emotional resilience is about feeling deeply, about engaging fully with life's highs and lows, and about finding the courage to stand firm in the face of discomfort. The key is not in avoiding pain or striving for constant happiness, but in learning to find meaning and growth through the entire spectrum of human emotion. The realization that pain and vulnerability are part of the human experience frees them from the constant need to suppress, deny, or escape these feelings. This shift also leads to a transformation in their external relationships. As they begin to embrace their vulnerability, they open up to others in ways they never could before. They become more authentic, more present, and more compassionate. They learn that true strength is not in isolation, but in connection, with others and with themselves. Their newfound emotional resilience allows them to weather the storms of life with greater ease and confidence. They are no longer afraid of their emotions or of what others might think. Instead, they see their vulnerability as a source of power, a strength that allows them to be more connected and more human. In the cinematic storytelling of this transformation, we use silence and stillness as key devices. The protagonist's emotional awakening is underscored by moments of quiet reflection, where the noise of the outside world fades away, and the only sound is their own breathing. These moments of silence symbolize the calm that follows emotional chaos, the peace that comes from embracing one's full emotional range. This shift is subtle but profound, and it is in these quiet moments that the protagonist learns the true meaning of emotional resilience. As the section draws to a close, the protagonist's emotional journey has led them to a place of understanding and acceptance. They now know that emotional resilience is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to face it head-on. They have learned to stand tall, not in spite of their emotions, but because of them. With this realization, they are ready to face the world with a new sense of strength, grounded in emotional authenticity. This transformation not only brings peace to the protagonist but also offers the viewer a deep, philosophical insight, that true emotional resilience comes not from avoiding or controlling emotions, but from understanding and embracing them. The shift from resistance to acceptance is the key to unlocking lasting emotional strength. With this insight in hand, the protagonist moves forward into a new chapter of their life, one where they are unshakable, not because they deny their emotions, but because they have learned to flow with them, to be one with their inner world. As this section concludes, the emotional breakthrough of the protagonist sets the stage for the final part of the video, where we will integrate this new understanding into the practical realities of daily life. The emotional awakening that has taken place is only the beginning. Now, the task is to apply these insights to the world around them, to create a life that is not just unshakable in the face of adversity, but deeply connected to the fullness of the human experience. As we move into the final section, we begin to integrate the insights and transformations the protagonist has undergone into the fabric of their everyday life. The goal here is to reconnect the philosophical realization that true strength comes not from emotional suppression, but from embracing vulnerability with the practical challenges we face in the modern world. We explore how the protagonist applies this newfound emotional resilience in their personal relationships, professional life, and in the way they perceive and interact with the world. At the core of this section is the realization that emotional resilience does not require perfection. The protagonist no longer expects themselves to be invulnerable or to have all the answers. They accept that life is filled with uncertainty, complexity, and emotional challenges, and that this is precisely what makes life meaningful. Instead of striving for emotional detachment or a state of constant calm, they now understand that real strength is in staying present with their emotions, accepting them fully, and allowing them to guide their decisions. In other words, the focus has shifted from controlling emotions to understanding them and responding to them with authenticity and grace. The protagonist's new perspective begins to influence their actions in profound ways. First, we see how this shift impacts their personal relationships. In the past, they may have kept their guard up, afraid of being vulnerable, fearful of rejection or judgment. They may have withheld their true feelings to maintain an image of emotional strength or composure. Now, however, they begin to share their authentic emotional experience with others. This doesn't mean they are constantly seeking validation or sympathy, but rather that they are opening up in a genuine, human way. They allow themselves to be seen, flaws and all, and in doing so, they create deeper, more meaningful connections with those around them. This vulnerability brings with it a sense of freedom. The protagonist no longer feels the weight of pretending to be someone they are not. They no longer have to wear a mask of invulnerability. They begin to find a new sense of peace in simply being themselves, imperfections, emotions, and all. This is an emotionally liberating experience, one that allows them to engage more deeply with the people they love, and to build trust and understanding in ways they never could have before. We also see how this newfound emotional resilience extends to the protagonist's professional life. The pressure to appear emotionally detached or perfect in the workplace is often immense, yet the protagonist now recognizes that true leadership, creativity, and problem-solving come not from controlling emotions, but from understanding and working with them. They stop pretending to have it all figured out, and instead, they approach challenges with openness and curiosity. Their emotional vulnerability becomes a source of strength, as they no longer feel the need to hide their doubts or fears. Instead, they address challenges with authenticity, whether that means admitting they don't have all the answers or acknowledging the stress they are under. This openness allows them to connect more effectively with colleagues, foster collaborative environments, and inspire others through their example. As the protagonist moves through their day-to-day life, they also begin to embrace a deeper sense of inner peace. They no longer react to the world with the same frantic, anxious energy they once did. Instead, they have developed the capacity to pause, reflect, and respond mindfully. They realize that emotional resilience is not about being unaffected by the ups and downs of life, but about how we respond to them. When faced with adversity or difficult emotions, they no longer try to push those feelings aside. Instead, they allow themselves to experience them, process them, and move through them with acceptance and compassion. This ability to be present with their emotions, without letting them dominate or overwhelm them, brings a sense of calm and clarity that was once elusive. The protagonist also learns to integrate the lessons of emotional resilience into their relationship with the world at large. They begin to see life through a lens of acceptance and grace, knowing that each moment, whether joyful or painful, offers an opportunity for growth. They are no longer afraid of facing their emotions head-on. In fact, they have come to see emotions as a source of wisdom, a way to guide their decisions and understand their deeper needs. They no longer live in reaction to the world, but in alignment with their inner truth. A critical element of this section is the poetic, philosophical reflection on the nature of strength. We revisit the initial concept that emotional resilience is not about being invulnerable or emotionless, but about being fully present with our emotional experience. This realization is framed in a timeless, reflective statement that ties everything together. The truest strength is not the absence of fear, but the courage to stand firm in its presence, we might say. This encapsulates the journey the protagonist has taken, from emotional fragmentation and resistance to acceptance and peace. As the section progresses, we start to close the loop with the opening scenario. Recall the soldier or the CO, the one who seemed so invulnerable on the outside. Now, with the knowledge gained through their emotional awakening, they are no longer trying to appear strong or invincible. They no longer hide their vulnerability beneath a mask of stoicism. Instead, they stand firm in the truth of who they are, flawed, emotional, and deeply human. This is the paradox of emotional resilience. It is not found in perfection, but in the acceptance of imperfection. The soldier, the CEO, and the protagonist all come to understand that emotional strength comes from being at peace with their vulnerabilities and fears, not from running away from them. The video begins to wind down, but the emotional resonance of the journey lingers. We offer a final reflection on how the audience can begin to incorporate these lessons into their own lives. Like the protagonist, they too can find strength not by numbing their emotions or seeking control, but by embracing the full depth of their human experience. By acknowledging their vulnerability, they become unshakable, not in the sense of being impervious to life's challenges, but in their ability to face those challenges with authenticity, courage, and grace. As the video concludes, we return to the opening imagery of the unshakable individual. The person who once appeared emotionally invulnerable is now seen standing in their vulnerability, stronger than ever before. They are unshakable, not because they are impervious to emotions, but because they are fully present with them. The final message is simple but profound. True strength is not about being untouched by life. It is about embracing it fully, with all its pain, joy, and everything in between. With this final, reflective statement, the video leaves the audience with a sense of deep emotional clarity and an invitation to embrace their own emotional journey.